If you think the Epstein case is just about one man, you're missing the bigger picture. Before anything else, let's be clear. The crimes involved in this case are deeply disturbing and absolutely condemnable. Nothing about them should be minimized. But this story isn't only about the crimes. It's about power. It's about influence. And it's about how a man with no college degree ended up surrounded by presidents, royalty, billionaires, and global elites. In 2008, he signed one of the most controversial plea deals in modern U.S. history. In 2019, he was arrested again. Weeks later, he was dead. The official ruling was suicide. Yet, the unusual sequence of events that night raised questions that still haven't faded. This video isn't about conspiracy. It's about what is documented, what is confirmed, and what remains unanswered. Because the Epstein case didn't just shock America. It exposed something deeper. And once you see the full picture, it's hard to look away. Before we begin, let's be clear about one thing. The crimes associated with the Jeffrey Epstein case are deeply disturbing and morally reprehensible. They involve exploitation, abuse, and suffering that should never be minimized or sensationalized. This video does not exist to glorify those events. It exists to examine the power, structures, legal decisions, unanswered questions, and public distrust that continued to surround one of the most controversial cases in modern history. The Epstein case became a symbol in the world. A symbol of wealth, access, influence, secrecy, and the uncomfortable question of whether power can bend justice. Jeffrey Epstein was not born into political royalty or financial aristocracy. He began as a teacher at a prestigious private school in New York, despite lacking a completed college degree. From there, he moved into finance, working for Bear Stearns for a short period before eventually establishing himself as a financial manager for extremely wealthy clients. Over time, his name became associated with billionaires, politicians, royalty, academics, and business leaders. What made Epstein unusual was not only his wealth, but his access. He moved in circles that most people never see: private jets, exclusive parties, high-level gatherings. His Manhattan townhouse became a social hub for powerful figures. Photographs and documented meetings show Epstein alongside globally recognized names. Bill Clinton's name appeared in publicly released flight logs connected to Epstein's private jet. Prince Andrew later faced civil allegations related to the case, which he denied, and eventually reached a settlement without admitting liability. Donald Trump was photographed with Epstein in social settings years before the criminal investigations intensified. Bill Gates acknowledged meeting Epstein after Epstein's prior conviction and later described those meetings as a mistake. These associations, documented in photographs, interviews, and public records, fueled intense public speculation. Public appearances and flight logs do not automatically imply involvement in crimes. However, the scale of Epstein-esque connections contributed to the public perception that this case extended far beyond a single individual. The first major turning point came in the mid-2000s. In Florida, authorities began investigating allegations involving underage girls. By 2007, federal prosecutors had prepared a case that could have led to serious federal charges. What happened next would become one of the most controversial legal agreements in modern American history. In 2008, Epstein signed what is known as a non-prosecution agreement. Instead of facing federal charges that could have resulted in a lengthy prison sentence, he pleaded guilty to state charges and received an 18-month sentence in a county jail. Even more controversial was the structure of that sentence. Epstein was granted work release privileges, allowing him to leave jail during the day for extended periods. Years later, this agreement would face enormous scrutiny. Critics argued that the deal was unusually lenient. Questions were raised about why federal charges were not pursued. The agreement also included provisions that reportedly shielded potential co-conspirators from federal prosecution. When these details became widely known, public outrage intensified. The case began to represent something larger than itself. It became a symbol of perceived inequality within the justice system. Whether one views the agreement as a legal negotiation or as evidence of influence, the optics were undeniably damaging. For several years after serving his sentence, Epstein resumed a relatively private but still connected lifestyle. He continued to maintain relationships within elite circles. However, in 2019, federal prosecutors in New York brought new charges against him, alleging sex trafficking of minors. The arrest shocked the public. It signaled that the earlier chapter of the case was not the end. Epstein was detained at the Metropolitan Correctional Center in New York. The world watched closely. Given the high-profile nature of the case and the powerful names previously associated with him, many assumed the upcoming trial would expose new information, but events took another unexpected turn. On August 10, 2019, Epstein was found unresponsive in his cell. The official ruling by the medical examiner was suicide by hanging. The Department of Justice later stated that there was no evidence of homicide. However, the circumstances surrounding his death quickly fueled widespread skepticism. On the night of his death, several unusual factors were reported. His cellmate had been transferred out. 2 guards assigned to monitor the unit reportedly fell asleep and later falsified records. Some security cameras were said to have malfunctioned. The combination of these events created a perception of systemic failure. While official investigations did not conclude foul play, the unusual sequence of events contributed to intense public doubt. It is critical to distinguish between verified facts and speculation. Official reports concluded suicide. The Department of Justice conducted reviews and stated there was no evidence supporting homicide theories. At the same time, the documented lapses in protocol were real and acknowledged. The guards faced legal consequences for falsifying records. The institutional failures were not imaginary. They were part of the official record. The death of Epstein did not close the case. Instead, it amplified the public's suspicion. In the age of social media, skepticism spreads rapidly. The phrase "Epstein didn't kill himself" became a viral meme, reflecting widespread distrust rather than verified evidence. Conspiracy theories multiplied. Some suggested powerful individuals orchestrated his death to silence him. Others believed he may not have died at all. There is no verified evidence supporting these claims. But their popularity reveals something important. The public's confidence in institutions was already fragile. One of the most significant developments after Epstein's death was the prosecution of Ghislaine Maxwell, a longtime associate accused of helping recruit and groom victims. In 2021, Maxwell was convicted on multiple federal charges and later sentenced to prison. Her trial reintroduced elements of the case into the public sphere. Documents were unsealed. Testimonies were reviewed. Names appeared in court filings. But again, appearing in documents did not automatically mean criminal wrongdoing. Courts rely on evidence, not speculation. Throughout this entire saga, the tension between verified information and public suspicion has defined the narrative. On one side are official findings, court records, and documented evidence. On the other side is a public that saw a powerful man receive a controversial plea deal, maintain elite connections, and die under unusual circumstances before trial. It is also worth noting that the Epstein case intersected with broader societal conversations. The hashtag #MeToo movement was gaining momentum. Public tolerance for institutional silence was decreasing. The idea that wealth and influence could shield individuals from accountability became a central theme in cultural discourse. The Epstein case sits at the intersection of crime, power, media, and public psychology. It forces uncomfortable questions. How do legal negotiations work when high-profile individuals are involved? How does public perception shape narratives? When does skepticism become conspiracy? And how does institutional failure erode trust? There is a difference between asking questions and making accusations. Responsible analysis acknowledges both the confirmed facts and the limits of available evidence. According to official records, Epstein died by suicide. According to court documents, certain individuals were associated with him socially or professionally. According to public investigations, the 2008 agreement was controversial and later criticized. Beyond that, many claims remain unproven. The reason this case continues to generate attention years later is not only because of the crimes themselves. It is because of what the case symbolizes. It symbolizes inequality before the law. It symbolizes institutional opacity. It symbolizes the uncomfortable reality that power networks often operate in spaces inaccessible to ordinary citizens. In the end, the Epstein case became more than a criminal investigation. It became a cultural marker of distrust. It exposed weaknesses in legal processes. It highlighted the role of media in shaping narratives. And it demonstrated how quickly information gaps can be filled by speculation. We must be careful not to replace evidence with imagination. But we must also acknowledge that institutional transparency matters. When powerful figures are involved, public scrutiny intensifies. That scrutiny is not inherently conspiratorial. It is a reflection of democratic expectation. The tragedy of this case lies not only in the documented crimes, but also in the unanswered questions that remain in the public mind. Some of those questions stem from real procedural failures. Others stem from speculation amplified by social media. Distinguishing between the two is essential. History will likely remember the Epstein case not only for its criminal allegations, but for the broader conversation it ignited about power, accountability, and trust. Whether one views it primarily as a legal scandal, a moral failure, or a symbol of systemic inequality, it remains one of the defining controversies of its era. If this breakdown helped clarify the known facts and the surrounding questions, consider supporting the channel. Responsible, balanced discussions about complex topics require careful research and thoughtful presentation. Thank you for watching. If you enjoy content like this, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more.